My name is Roland, and I was reborn into the body of a noble prince in some boring, dangerous border town in the middle of nowhere. An old man came to get me, but before he could even knock, he ran into one of the maids who had just served me. She told him I was sleeping, but her eyes said something completely different. That shifty, nervous look of someone desperately hiding something. The old man walked in and found me passed out cold, a wine goblet tipped over on the floor. He didn't know it yet, but at that exact moment, the prince was already dead, and that's when I took over his body. I woke up trying to figure out what the heck was going on. The old man immediately told me to get up. There was a witch who needed to be executed, and I was the one who had to give the order. Meanwhile, outside, I could hear the crowd going absolutely crazy. A young woman was being pelted with rocks while everyone screamed, "Witch, witch!" The nobles? Oh, they had front row seats up on the balcony, sipping wine like they'd paid for VIP access to a show. That's when it really hit me. I had been reborn as a prince. I played it cool, walked around the room and spotted the poisoned wine goblet on the floor. Someone had murdered the original owner of this body. When I finally stepped outside, dude, my jaw dropped. Like I still couldn't fully believe I was in another world. The whole crowd was screaming at me to authorize the witch's hanging. In the middle of the mob, I noticed that same maid from earlier, staring in pure shock. Because the prince was still alive. Because I was still alive. I looked at the so-called witch and realized she was just a young woman. The whole thing felt completely insane to me. But since I had to keep pretending to be the prince, I called for a delay in the trial. The royal knight immediately shut me down. You can't do that. Once a witch is identified, she has to be executed on the spot, or she'll draw more witches to us. So I turned around and said, and why wouldn't that be a good thing? More witches show up, we catch them all at once. He just froze. And just like that, the trial was postponed. Later, I was riding in the carriage back to the mansion, and without realizing it, I was sitting right next to the very person who had poisoned me, still playing the role of a harmless little maid. Once we arrived, I headed to my room and started processing everything. I was stuck in the body of a joke of a prince. No respect, no real territory in some grim, dark, backwards world. I thought, what on earth am I supposed to do here? Then I looked in the mirror and realized, okay, at least the guy was seriously good looking. I decided I was going to make the most of this situation. Later, over dinner, the royal advisor showed up and got straight to the point. Why hadn't I ordered the witch's execution? This wasn't something that could be brushed aside. I casually asked why executing a witch was such a big deal. He explained that people had spotted more alleged witches in the western forest, and they'd found a symbol. The emblem of the Witches Cooperative Association. I had no idea what that was, so I asked. The advisor explained. Witches used to operate solo, but this association wanted to unite them all under one mission, finding something called the Sacred Mountain, the only place where witches could find eternal peace. Because of that, the association was constantly recruiting. I asked, completely deadpan, "Are you scared they'll find out the witch is still alive and come to break her out?" He panicked and confirmed it, emphasizing that the witch needed to be executed immediately, because once someone awakens a witch's power, that power is terrifying, and that word, power, made my eyes light up. The advisor explained that a few days earlier, the mine on the northern ridge had collapsed, and the witch had revealed her power by burning a man until he melted like a candle and spread across the floor. After hearing that, I needed to see this witch for myself. The old man completely lost it. I also asked why she wasn't being burned at the stake like usual. The advisor answered, dead serious, because she doesn't fear fire. But coming from the modern world, I thought this was all straight-up fantasy nonsense. I headed down to the dungeon to see it with my own eyes. The knight begged me to turn back, saying he couldn't guarantee my safety down there. I looked at him and said, "If you never face evil, how are you ever going to defeat it?" He agreed with that, but pushed back. There are limits to what a human being can do. Recklessness isn't courage. Still convinced the witch was just a misunderstood woman, I looked at him and asked, "So what you're saying is, we should dish out justice against the weakest opponents and just ignore the stronger ones?" He apologized, held it together, and the two of us moved forward. When I finally reached the witch's cell, I was stunned. The woman was drop-dead gorgeous, deep blue eyes that showed absolutely no malice, only an unshakable sense of conviction. Even with her in chains, the knight snapped into defensive mode immediately. I introduced myself and asked her name. In a weak voice, she answered, "Anna." I asked her to tell me everything. Anna, reluctant and clearly broken, explained, when the mine collapsed, her father, a miner, got his leg trapped inside. She rushed to help him, but another miner took advantage of the chaos to steal the money her father had saved up. A lifetime of grueling, back-breaking work, gone. Her father, even trapped and badly injured, fought with everything he had. When Anna arrived, she saw the thief raising a pickaxe, about to bring it down on her own father's head, and without a second thought, she killed him. I asked how she got captured. The advisor answered for her. And the answer hit me like a punch to the gut. Anna was turned in by her own father. Yeah, her dad handed her over for a reward of 25 gold coins, enough to live comfortably for the rest of his life. I looked directly at Anna and asked, the man she killed was older, physically stronger than her. How did she do it? Anna answered quietly, with what they call the devil's power. Still skeptical, I asked her to show me. Everyone completely freaked out. The witch could kill every single person in that room at any moment. Even Anna herself, realizing this was my first time actually being face to face with a witch, warned me, your curiosity is going to get you killed one day. I looked at her and replied, if you're really a demon, I shouldn't be the first one you'd go after. It should be your father. Those words hit her like a freight train. I watched Anna's tears fall. Being betrayed by your own father is a different kind of pain. I stepped closer and looked her in the eyes. Are you someone worthy of pity? Or a demon with an incredible gift for acting? Then, even with the night trying to physically stop me, I yanked off the collar that was sealing Anna's power, while everyone scrambled to hold me back and ran for the exit in full panic mode. I finally saw it with my own eyes, the raw, overwhelming power of that woman. Flames exploded through the cell. The knight screamed at me to run, but I told him to wait. And then I noticed Anna was controlling the fire, keeping it contained within the cell walls. I watched her walk toward me, her clothes burning completely away until she extinguished the flames and asked me in that calm voice that sent chills down my spine, my lord, was your curiosity satisfied? Anna told me that now that I'd seen it for myself, I could go ahead and execute her. But I took off my own cloak and draped it over her and told her I wasn't going to kill her. Quite the opposite, actually. I wanted to hire her. So, the next day, I was alone in my room, just sitting there thinking about Anna's powers. Back in my past life, I was an engineer, and I know thermodynamics like the back of my hand. I know damn well that heat never flows from cold to hot without some kind of consequence. That entropy always increases in an irreversible reaction. And then it hit me. Anna just straight up ignores all of that. She creates heat out of literally nothing. Sidesteps the burden of entropy like it's not even a thing. My jaw dropped. The power of witches is like insane and insanely convenient. That's when I heard Barov walk into the room. I cut straight to the chase and asked if he'd completed the task. Barov confirmed without hesitating. The witch was hanged at noon, and the prisoner had a hood over his head so nobody would figure out who he actually was. I was satisfied. Then I asked Barov for a full report on the border city's trade. Taxes, fixed expenses, everything from the last decade. I also asked for a detailed breakdown of the city's production sectors. Textiles, steel, ceramics, all of it. Barov, who was used to dealing with the old prince, a complete deadbeat, useless from start to finish, looked at me like I just asked him to solve a math problem on the moon and questioned why I needed any of that. I looked at him and kept it simple. Don't worry about it, just bring me what I asked for. Barov agreed, and, visibly relieved, mentioned that I was finally taking the royal decree seriously. Then I walked over to the kingdom's map and started breaking down the geopolitics of the whole situation. Timothy oversees the economic hub of Valencia. Gerald commands the military fortress at Coldwind Crest. Gracia controls the trade port of Clearwater. Tilly manages the cultural center of the Silver City. And me? I got tossed into the most desolate, broke-down border city in the entire kingdom. Taking in the full picture, I asked Barov, dead cold, what are my actual odds here? Barov kept it real. Since I'd made a massive mess of things the previous year and basically ran the city into the ground, it wasn't going to be easy. The local nobles had been doing whatever they wanted, with zero consequences. So I asked who was really calling the shots in the region. Barov answered without missing a beat. The royal house of Fortacinza, the Wimbledons. I gave a dry smile and said, that's just a front. I explained that the ones who truly run the kingdom are the Holy City, the Hermes. Only someone crowned by the Pope is considered a legitimate king, which means the current regime is nothing more than a puppet of the theocracy. Doesn't matter how much my brothers build up their territories. In the end, everything belongs to the church. I wrapped it up with total conviction. If I build a kingdom completely outside that system, the throne will be mine. Then I looked straight at Barov and asked, point blank, you, as a loyal defender of the royal house, aren't you sick of the church sticking its nose in governance? Barov agreed but pushed back. The church's power was deeply rooted in the people. What could we even do about it? I responded calmly. The people's support for the church comes from the lies it tells. If we can prove the church is lying, the people will stop backing it. And the best way to do that? Prove that witches aren't the incarnation of the devil. I watched Barov finally put the pieces together. That was it. That was the real reason I'd saved Anna. Then I looked Barov dead in the eyes and said, if I win the royal decree, the title of assistant could be stripped from you. Maybe you go further and become my hand of the king. And then, Dead serious. Barov never questioned my decisions again. I watched Barov leave the room completely shook. The knight, looking uneasy, mentioned he was worried the other nobles might find out I was sheltering a witch, but Barov had bigger things on his mind and brushed the comment off. Meanwhile, I found out Anna was in the garden, alone with her thoughts. She had just signed an equal terms work contract with me. Barov told her she'd receive 1 gold coin per month. Anna's jaw hit the floor. That was way more than her father made in an entire year of hard labor. She just couldn't wrap her head around what I actually wanted from her. Because to her, a witch is filthy, demonic, a child of the devil. That's when I showed up and snapped her out of her spiral. I apologized, acknowledging that after everything she'd been through, she deserved way more time to rest. Anna, still not getting any of it, asked why I'd saved her, and what the real reason behind that contract was. I decided to play the gentleman card and invited her to take a walk. As we walked, Anna circled back. She had killed someone. She deserved to be punished. She deserved to die. I explained calmly that what she did was self-defense, something anyone in her position would have done. But my words didn't even come close to getting through to Anna, who held firm. I'm the incarnation of the devil, and this sin can't be erased. Without rushing it, I picked a citrus flower and held it out to her. This flower is highly poisonous, I said. I watched Anna drop it instantly, startled. I smiled. I was lying. I explained. The flower was still the same flower. What changed was Anna's perception of it. And it was the exact same thing with a witch's powers. They're not good or evil. They're natural. This whole story about impurity, about the devil, that's just opinions. And opinions can be changed. Anna fired back in tears that I was being way too simplistic, that the power was terrifying, that it would kill everyone who got close to her. Realizing there was no point in pushing further, I said with complete honesty, if you want to die, I'm not going to stop you. But know this, dying won't fix anything. Your father will still hate witches. Everything you lost won't come back. And then I dropped the real one. You can choose a different path. Build a world with me where witches can live free. I watched Anna freeze. In a quiet voice, she confessed, I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to be free. To study, to read, to sing out loud. I just want to live. And she asked, eyes glistening, will that day actually come? I extended my hand and answered, yes, but only if we work together. I watched Anna look at that hand and make her choice. She was going to help me. So I instructed Anna to train with her powers until she had full control over them. Later that night, I found out a mysterious female assassin had sent a message to the other witches about what I was up to. The next day, after pulling an all-nighter going through documents, I figured out that the border city was a mining town, completely suffocated by noble corruption. And to make things worse, the region had zero agricultural production. So I asked Barov how they handled food supply. Barov explained, all the ore they produced was traded for food with Longsong Fortress. The border city was basically treated like property of the Longsongs, who handed out barely enough rations to keep the workers standing. Baron Boris, before I took over, blindly obeyed the Longsongs, handing over every last bit of ore in exchange for scraps. I brought up Boris and mentioned I'd never trusted the guy. I knew that by taking his territory, I'd made myself a declared enemy. Barov confirmed. Boris and the other nobles had personal interests tied to Longsong Fortress. They didn't care about how much ore was being produced. The food they sent to the city barely kept people alive. I decided right then and there, that ends now. Cut off all trades with the fortress immediately. I laid out the plan. We'd sell the ore to Willow City and buy food directly from them. Barov worried Willow City wouldn't be willing to take on such a massive quantity of ore, since they'd never dealt with anything on that scale. But I pushed back, calm and collected. We'd sell at half the market price. With margins like that, they weren't going to say no. Barov got anxious about the future. After all, we'd be burning through our stockpile. I explained with long-term vision. Once we'd built up enough resources, we'd expand. The border city sits right at the source of the river that cuts through the entire kingdom. With enough ships, we could sail through the whole thing and trade with everyone. The Rubywood River would become the border city's Silk Road. Barov, confused, said the city didn't produce silk. I laughed. It's a metaphor, bro. Then Barov dropped the bomb. If we went through with this, the fortress would no longer take in the city's residents during winter. I didn't get why we'd need the fortress in winter to begin with. Barov explained, winter brings monsters. The gates of hell crack open inside Dragonspine Mountain and corrupt the animals, turning them into bloodthirsty demonic beasts. They attack in hordes and tear through everything in their path. And since the city has no walls, every year the residents take shelter for months inside Longsong Fortress. It hit me hard. Without solving the beast problem, there was no way to establish myself and build trade there. I called in the 2 patrol captains and a man who claimed to have actually fought the creatures before. One of the captains tried to speak, but since he was standing in front of me, a prince, he completely locked up. Not a single coherent word came out of the poor guy. The other captain stepped up and explained. At the end of autumn, the patrol kept a close eye on the misty forest. When they spotted signs of the beasts, they lit the signal fires and booked it by boat down the Rubywood River to the fortress. I asked if they got attacked on the river. The captain explained that the current was strong and the river ran too deep. In years of recorded history, not a single demonic beast had ever crossed it. I asked how long the demonic months lasted. The captain answered, 2 to 3 months, ending when the sky clears and the snow melts. But last year, it dragged on for 4 months, and a lot of people died. I didn't get it. If they were inside the fortress, how did they starve? The captain explained. The fortress handed out food based on ore delivered. With careful rationing, it lasted up to 3 months, but by the 4th month, the ore ran out. There was no way to get back to the city to mine more, and people were dropping dead of starvation right inside the fortress. It clicked, completely and finally. Taking shelter in Longsong Fortress was not an option. The hunter then stepped forward and introduced himself. He'd killed 2 beasts, a mutant boar and a mutant wolf. He explained that the beasts were corrupted wild animals. The more powerful the animal was before the corruption, the more dangerous the beast became. A wolf got way faster. A boar developed skin so tough that crossbow bolts couldn't even pierce it. I concluded that, despite being stronger and more agile, they were still animals. The hunter agreed, but warned me that the hybrid beasts existed. Those were the real nightmares. They could transform, grow wings, and with their enhanced sense of smell, it didn't matter where you hid, they would find you. They toyed with their prey before devouring it, like they actually enjoyed the suffering. Real demons. I asked the hunter's name, and why he was keeping his head down. Carter explained. The man was from the Sand People in exile, from the Mojin clan. I told him to raise his head and said firmly, "It doesn't matter who you are. As long as you're in the border city, you're part of my people. Tell me your name." The man lifted his head and answered, "Iron Axe." I thanked everyone, praised each of their contributions, and announced they'd each be rewarded with 10 silver coins. Afterward, I had Carter come with me to the border where the flame was lit during the demonic month. I studied the spot carefully. I noticed the men who lit the signal fire ran straight down the mountain to the river. I asked Carter the average distance to the water. "Approximately 600 meters, he answered. Then Carter, choosing his words carefully so as not to overstep, asked whether I was actually planning to stay in the border city during the demonic period. I confirmed. I watched Carter go pale. The city had only a handful of guards. The castle had no room for 2,000 residents. Defending against a horde of demonic beasts was flat out impossible. But I looked straight ahead, steady. I'm not planning on dying here, and I'm definitely not abandoning my people. And then, with that unshakable confidence of a brilliant reincarnated engineer that I carry with me everywhere, I wrapped it up. Right here. We're going to build the strongest, most unbreakable walls in history, and we're going to wipe those beasts out once and for all. The other day, there was Barov, working away and trying to wrap his head around what on earth had happened to me. Because, the Roland he knew was completely different from the Roland standing in front of him now. Barov remembered it well. The 4th prince had a reputation for being the biggest failure in all of nobility. Useless. A walking embarrassment to the royal family. The kind of guy his own brothers pretended not to recognize at family dinners. Basically the awkward, unremarkable nerd that nobody took seriously. And the only reason Barov had agreed to work with me in the first place was pretty straightforward. The king had promised that once the royal decree was finalized, he'd be appointed Minister of Finance. But then Barov started asking himself, what in the world had happened to me? Because ever since I saved that witch, he watched me become a completely different person. Literally overnight. All of a sudden I showed up with razor-sharp strategic thinking, a brilliant mind, throwing around words and concepts Barov had never even heard in his life, things like Silk Road or other stuff along those lines. Barov didn't even know what half of it meant. On top of that, I'd already set my sights on the church as a major obstacle. I was already thinking about the city's long-term development. I had a full plan laid out. Barov had to admit it. My vision for the future was almost frighteningly perfect. But then came the real problem. Because none of that brilliance meant anything if we didn't survive the demonic period. And with winter coming in 3 months, I still wanted to build a 600-meter wall. Barov thought that was flat out impossible. Completely, utterly impossible. And yet, deep down, somewhere in that old chest of his, a tiny little voice told him I was unpredictable, and that maybe, just maybe, I could actually pull it off. Meanwhile, Carter was coordinating the workers at my request. The mission, haul in limestone and a cart full of clay. Then crush everything into small pieces, mix it all together carefully, and have Anna melt it down with her fire magic. Once Anna finished, I had them mix everything with gypsum and grind it down until it turned into a fine powder. Carter, completely lost on what was happening, finally couldn't hold back anymore. "My prince, what's the point of all this?" I gave him a small smile and said, "It's a new kind of alchemy." Shortly after, the mysterious powder was ready. I turned to Anna and said, "Miss Anna, allow me to show you a little of my magic." Anna looked at me with this curious expression and asked, "You know how to use magic too?" "I do, but it's a different kind of magic. Mine is called science." Then I told Carter to mix the powder with water and pour it evenly over the stacked stones. And I guaranteed him, by tomorrow they'll become a wall, solid and unbreakable. Carter looked skeptical. "You know that face like, 'Sure thing, my prince, whatever you say.'" I turned to Anna and asked, "And you, Anna? Do you believe me?" Without a second of hesitation, she answered, "If you say so, I believe you." The next day, I told Carter to hit those stones with everything he had. Carter, still doubting the whole thing, grabbed a shovel and swung at the stones with full force, and sparks flew. The stones were as hard as steel. Carter went absolutely wild. Right then and there, he started doing the math out loud. With this stuff, they could build a wall along the entire border in 5 years. They could reinforce the castle. They could, but I was already thinking bigger. Quietly, almost to myself, I murmured that they could build 10,000 mansions, shelter poor scholars, make the people truly happy. Then I turned with that look of iron-set determination and said, "We're going to build a better home for everyone. Houses that can stand up to any weather, that not even storms or blizzards can tear down." Then I put Carter in charge of managing the wall's construction and asked Anna to prepare a fresh batch of that material every single day. Before heading out, Carter couldn't hold back his curiosity. "What do you call this miraculous alchemical powder, my prince?" I smiled and revealed, "Cement." A few days later, problem. Construction had barely gotten off the ground. Barov explained that Carter, as dedicated as he was, had zero experience in construction. And to raise a 600-meter wall from scratch, we needed a seasoned architect, a real master builder, supervising every step. I realized that even cement, as powerful as it was, couldn't fix everything on its own. I told Barov to go out and find stonemasons immediately. Barov explained there was no one with that level of specialization in the frontier city. "Then look somewhere else," I said without blinking. "Longsong Fortress, Willow City, wherever you need to go." Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Anna's old teacher was walking through the city center and stopped in front of the gallows. He stood there staring, convinced that was where Anna had been hanged. Still grieving, just a few days earlier, another one of his students had come forward and revealed that she too was a witch. It felt like the weight of the entire world was pressing down on his shoulders. That's when a man called out to him. Since he was one of the few people around who could read, he was asked to decipher a notice posted on the wall. The teacher read it aloud for everyone nearby. There were open positions. Men between 20 and 40 years old to break stones, stonemasons of any gender with masonry experience, general laborers, and master builders of any age with experience in fortress construction or large-scale engineering projects. The pay was very good, and the master builder position came with nothing less than 1 gold royal coin per month. The crowd around him went absolutely crazy. This was a life-changing opportunity, and the teacher realized this was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. He took off running to the interview. He reached me and introduced himself. "My name is Carl Van Bate. I've worked as a teacher here in the city, but I worked on the design and construction of the palace as well as renovations on several public facilities, including Ashfort." Barov's brow furrowed immediately. "All of Ashfort's construction was the responsibility of the Stonemasons Guild. Were you a member?" "Yes," Carl confirmed. I got straight to the point. During Ashfort's construction, there was a collapse, and every member of the guild was executed. Carl took a slow, deep breath and said, "The story that spread is a lie. He laid everything out for us. The administrator at the time, driven by bribes, had sabotaged the entire team. He'd ordered a different type of stone to be used, even after being warned it would compromise the structural integrity of the whole project. The administrator ignored every warning. The accident happened, and in the end, the administrator claimed good intentions, walked free, and the stonemasons were all executed." Carl had heard the rumors before anyone else. He slipped away in the middle of the night, had been hiding his identity ever since. I looked him dead in the eye. "Why are you revealing this now? You know you're risking your own life?" Carl held my gaze and said, "I know, but if I hadn't run, I'd be dead. I can't reveal everything just yet, but I'm begging you to give me a chance. I've been a stonemason my whole life. I need to make things right." I asked for Barov's take. Barov was straight with me. By law, he's a convicted fugitive. He should be eliminated. But given your current needs, hiring him is the best call. I stood up. With every ounce of authority I had, I pardoned Carl's crimes and appointed him master builder and a member of the administrative office. Carl's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe it. He'd been absolutely certain he was going to die right there. I then unfolded the map and showed him where I wanted the wall. Carl studied everything carefully and said, with 150 men, probably 3 years for the full project. I crossed my arms. We need it done before the demonic period. Carl thought fast, revised the plan on the spot, suggested reducing the height and width of the wall. With 200 men, the foundation could be ready in a month. But the problem was the stone. Hard to break, hard to transport. If I can get you enough stone in time, I cut in. Can you finish in 3 months? Yes, Carl answered without hesitating. Then, let me show you a little of my magic. When Carl saw the cement for the first time, man, the guy nearly lost it on the spot. His eyes went wide, his voice shook. He stumbled over his words, saying that with something like this, they wouldn't even need to process the stones. The speed of any construction project would jump to a completely different level. They could absolutely meet the deadline, easily. Carl was dying to get his hands on it. But before I could leave, Carl decided to share the secret he'd still been holding back. That's when Anna came down the stairs. Carl stopped, stared, completely frozen. She was dead, he whispered. Anna explained to me that Carl was the teacher she'd told me so much about. Carl got emotional in a way he didn't even try to hide. He said he'd been having nightmares about her for days, that he'd been devastated, and that seeing her alive was more relief than he could even put into words. He dropped to one knee in front of me and thanked me for sparing Anna. I replied firmly, I don't see witches as incarnations of the devil. I won't hunt them down like the church commands. I would never harm Anna. That's when Carl revealed it. There was another witch in the city. I raised an eyebrow. A small smile crept into the corner of my mouth. A little girl named Nana, Carl said. She found out she was a witch just a few days ago. Then Carl, completely misreading the entire situation, started thanking me and saying what great luck it was for Anna to be joining my harem, and that even though Nana was still young, someday she'd grow into a beautiful woman and could. Barov completely lost it laughing. I exhaled slowly and explained, with the patience of a monk, Carl, you've got this all wrong. I saved Anna because I need her help. It was because of her that I managed to make the cement. That's it. Full stop. Carl turned the deepest shade of red and recorded history. Then I pulled him aside for a separate conversation. As we walked, Barov quietly warned me. Nana was the daughter of a noble, Baron Tigui Pine. If the nobles found out she was a witch, things would get complicated fast. I asked Carl, as Nana's teacher, to bring her to me during their regular lesson time, and I asked Barov to bring her to the kitchen as discreetly as possible. Later, Nana arrived. From the redness burning across her cheeks, it was pretty obvious Carl had said some very questionable things on the way over. I introduced myself and asked her to sit at the table. The little girl, shy with those tiny suspicious eyes, hesitated. So I pulled out the ultimate weapon against any woman in this world, food. Nana almost gave in. Almost. She held herself back at the very last second. That's when Anna came down the stairs. Nana saw her, recognized her, and erupted into tears, screaming, "Big Sis Anna!" A little while later, with Anna right beside her, Nana was demolishing the cake without a single ounce of guilt. And I took full advantage of the moment of vulnerability to drop the bombshell. I know you're a witch. Tell me, how did you find out? Nana explained. About a week earlier, she'd found a little bird with a broken leg. She desperately wanted to help it. She felt something flowing through her hands, like a sticky ball of water that wrapped itself around the bird. And then, it was healed. I processed everything quickly. Nana's power was healing. I sent Carter sprinting to a hunter to buy small animals, injured ones and dead ones, to test the limits of that ability. Nana, a little nervous, demonstrated her power, and I worked through the tests one by one. She could heal wounds, she could reattach severed limbs, but if the limb had been lost, she couldn't regenerate it. And death she couldn't reverse. Carter watched all of it in silence for a moment. He said that saving lives was a knight's duty, but that seeing it happen right in front of him was something else entirely, and he admitted he was starting to understand my approach with the witches. I asked Carter to find a way to always bring Nana over without drawing any attention, so she could train and develop her powers. Carter asked me why we didn't just keep her at the mansion. Because Nana hasn't been exposed as a witch yet, I explained. And since she's nobility, if we brought her here openly right now, we could spark a conflict with the local nobles. We're not ready for that yet. Then I looked around the room and said, dead serious. Beyond the demonic beasts, we have other enemies, and they live very close to us. Far away, a knight was delivering all the latest news to Garcia, my sister. He reported that the Valanegra fleet had returned from a successful raid. They'd intercepted a convoy of merchant ships, and the plunder was massive, enough to arm an entire platoon. Garcia liked what she heard and asked for the name of the captain who led the raid. The knight told her the man's name was Drake. Right then and there, Garcia used her authority to knight Drake on the spot and handed him command of the entire Vallenegra fleet, along with every last piece of loot from the raid. The knight acknowledged Garcia's command and said that Drake and his men would be deeply grateful for Her Highness's generosity. Then came the bombshell. The assassination attempt on Roland had failed, spectacularly. The pills had been mixed into the wine and Roland did drink them, but he just dozed off for a few seconds and woke up completely fine afterward. But Garcia is nothing if not pragmatic, and she made it crystal clear that a failure is a failure. She didn't want to hear any excuses. She warned that she'd give the assassin one more shot and ordered that some of the assassin's sister's belongings be delivered to her. After that, she dismissed the knight, but not before ordering that master alchemist Enbis be hanged, since he was the one who had made the poisoned pills. What Garcia didn't know was that the pills had actually worked perfectly, and the real Roland was dead. I had taken over his body. The next day, the ambassador from Longsong Fortress showed up at the border city to collect the minerals, and ended up noticing a ship from Willow City unloading food at the city's docks. Meanwhile, Barov got me up to speed on everything. He told me the city wall construction was moving along without a hitch, and that Master Mason Van Bat had guaranteed the project would be finished on schedule. Barov also informed me that the food purchased from Willow City had arrived at the docks and noted that the quantity was more than enough to feed everyone in the city through the winter. But Barov was seriously stressed out, insisting that even with everything seemingly going well, the city's budget deficit was still absolutely brutal. He believed that in the long run, the city was heading straight for bankruptcy, since all the major expenses were being covered out of my own pocket, and that we'd hold on for maybe one more spring at best. But I didn't sweat it. I told him I didn't care about burning through my own money, and that if we finished the wall and locked down my presence in the border city, the mineral production going forward would be guaranteed. But Barov pressed back, saying his real concern was that Duke Ryan wouldn't just let it slide if we cut off the mineral supply to Longsong Fortress. Right at that moment, a messenger announced that the ambassador from Longsong Fortress had arrived. I told Barov to go ask the kitchen staff to put together a lavish banquet using the food that had just been delivered. A subtle flex to show that food was no longer the only bargaining chip between the border city and Longsong Fortress. In the dining room, I could tell the ambassador had absolutely no idea where I'd gotten so much quality food, since it had always been the fortress that supplied food to the border city. He was also thrown off by the way I was eating, and asked me what those objects I was using as utensils were. I told him I called them chopsticks, and that I planned to normalize them across the entire city, since they were way cheaper than silver flatware, being made of wood, and were also pretty hygienic. I took the chance to get a little dig in on the ambassador too. Even with a full table in front of us, I said there was no good food in the border city and told him to just make do with whatever was on the table. The ambassador looked confused but thanked me anyway. Then I dropped the real news. All of that was my way of welcoming him, since every single one of those ingredients had arrived that very same day from Willow City. When it hit him that, for the first time in history, the border city was doing business with Willow City, the ambassador froze. Later, after dinner, we finally got down to what actually mattered. He told me he had come to let me know that the border city's deadline for delivering the minerals had already passed, and that Longsong Fortress had already prepared the food it was going to send our way. I explained about the landslide that had hit the mines, and said that because of it, mineral production had been completely shut down for a while, and had only recently gotten back on track, and that at the moment, I only had the equivalent of 2 months' worth of production stockpiled. The ambassador then asked why I wouldn't just deliver the 2 months' worth for the time being. So I laid it out straight. 2 months of minerals wouldn't guarantee enough food to feed my people. I explained that 2 years ago, many people in the border city had died of starvation because of the food shortage, and I made it clear I would never let that happen again. Then with iron in my voice, I declared, this method of exchange with the fortress must be abolished. I told him I had already sold all the minerals to Willow City and bought all the food my people needed to survive the winter, and made clear that doing business with Willow City was a far better deal than doing business with the fortress. The ambassador finally connected the dots about the ships he'd spotted earlier. The ambassador thought it over, and showing just how sharp he was, quickly figured out that since Willow City had never dealt in minerals before, they probably hadn't offered a great price, at most half the market value, which meant I was taking a loss. He also pointed out that since Longsong Fortress vastly outmatched Willow City and had been operating for generations, it was the only party capable of processing such a massive volume of minerals, and that long-term, the fortress would be the best possible trade partner, as it would work out better for both sides. Then the ambassador floated a proposal: sell the minerals to the fortress at 30% below market price, since it would be a win-win for everyone. I complimented his trading instincts and agreed that his suggestion would benefit everyone involved. but I asked whether he could guarantee that all 6 families of the fortress would agree to those terms. The ambassador said he'd do his best and told me he'd head back to the fortress to draw up a new contract. I agreed and wished him good news. Before leaving, the ambassador expressed concern for the border city, pointing out that the demon season was only 2 months away and that the trip to the fortress was long and dangerous. But I, with a smile on my face, told him I wouldn't be sending my people to the fortress because I was going to build a wall to defend the border city and lead my people against the demonic beasts, turning it into the new frontier of the kingdom of Fortisinza. The ambassador mounted his horse and rode off toward the fortress with a clear goal in mind, one that would benefit everyone. I sipped my wine and sighed, because I already knew how noble minds worked, and that even with the ambassador's good intentions, the 6 families of the fortress would never agree to the new terms. The ambassador finally met with Duke Ryan and told him everything he'd discovered during his visit to the border city and in the meeting he'd had with me. All the nobles laughed it off, saying that this little game of building a pebble wall was going to get everyone in the border city killed. Duke Ryan asked Boris what he knew about the wall, but Boris turned out to be a completely useless noble who had nothing useful to say, which left the Duke visibly disappointed. Since he knew Ambassador Petrov was sharp, the Duke asked for his take. Petrov said he believed Prince Roland's goal was to force them into conducting transactions with the border city using currency, not food, as was the custom, and that since Roland had been sent to govern under a royal decree, that made complete sense. He said that if they could, from that point on, purchase minerals at 30% below market price, it would still be a solid deal, and that if they secured the border city, long-term they'd save enormous costs in fighting the demonic beasts, and could use the vast stretch of land between the fortress and the city for farming. He also highlighted that since the royal decree was only valid for 5 years, Roland would be out of the city soon enough, and they'd be left with a thriving, powerful city. So Petrov suggested they send men to help Roland face the demonic beasts and buy the minerals at 30% below market price. The nobles started laughing at Petrov, and Duke Ryan even admitted it was a decent suggestion, but flexing his authority, said that even though it was a good idea, it was just a merchant's perspective. Merchants, he said, only see gains and losses. The Duke declared he hadn't clawed his way to the top by thinking only in terms of profit and loss, and asked why he would ever do business with someone he couldn't control. He said that under his command, anyone who disobeyed would be severely punished, and made it clear he didn't care about the border city, because as far as he was concerned, the only thing that mattered was that this was his territory, and nobody else got to interfere, not even a prince. The next day, everyone gathered in the center of the city. I began my speech, the one that was about to change everyone's life from that moment on. I declared that because of the mine collapse, Longsong Fortress had refused to send food for us to survive the winter, and that we had been abandoned just like they'd done in the past, leaving us to die. I also told everyone that the astrologers of Fortisinza had warned me the demon months would last longer than usual, more than 4 months, and that if we left things as they were, the tragedy from 2 years ago would repeat itself, or maybe be even worse. I reminded everyone of the family members they had lost, which left the whole crowd somber and furious. Then I revealed that I had bought enough food for us to make it through the winter. Bread, mead, dried meat, cheese, and a whole lot more. I swore on my name that I would not allow the tragedy of 2 years ago to happen again. Everyone erupted, cheering and chanting my name. But I warned them that because of this, we had offended Longsong Fortress, and that they had threatened to stop offering shelter to everyone during the winter. But I reassured them. As everyone had already noticed, I was building a solid wall to the west of the city, and I guaranteed that the demonic beasts were no stronger than ordinary wild animals. They couldn't scale walls or chew through stone. Then I asked, in my name as Prince of the Kingdom of Fortisinza, that everyone with strong arms and the determination to defend their homeland grab their weapons and join the militia. I announced that every militia member would receive 25 real silver coins per month, and that if anyone fell in battle, their family would receive 5 gold coins as compensation. Then I asked the question that separates the real ones from the cowards. Would you rather run and hide in the filthy shacks of Longsong Fortress and die of starvation like a nobody, or freeze to death with 0 dignity? Or would you rather ride with me, protect your friends and family, and defend the border city until the very last breath? Everyone roared back, fired up and ready to fight with everything they had. Later, after talking with Carter, Anna, and Nana, I asked Carter if the shipment I'd ordered before had arrived. He confirmed it had, but asked why I needed so much powdered snow and ice. I just told him it would be my next experiment. Later that night, in my room, I sat down and noticed a cup of wine waiting for me. I picked it up, and just as I was about to drink, I heard the sound of a pebble hitting the window. When I went to check it out, a woman caught me off guard, pressing a knife against my throat. Facing certain death, I completely froze. Fear takes over me, but for some reason, the woman doesn't kill me. She reassures me that we're not enemies. That's when I notice the symbol of the sacred mountain and the magic eye on her clothing. She compliments me for being a well-read guy. Then she removes her hood and introduces herself as Nightingale. My jaw drops at how stunning she is, and I immediately realize I'm staring dead in the face of a witch. Trying to hide how nervous I am, I ask what she's doing here, since killing me clearly doesn't seem to be the plan. Nightingale starts by thanking me for sparing Anna and Nana and taking such good care of them. That catches me completely off guard. She explains that she heard a witch had been captured here and came to rescue her, but to her surprise, I hadn't executed Anna. So she spent the entire week watching Nana and discovered she was a witch too. Nightingale says that even though she doesn't understand why I don't see witches as monsters, she wanted to thank me on behalf of the Witches Cooperation Association. Then she walks over to my bed, saying it's tiring to have a whole conversation standing up, and invites me to sit beside her. Nightingale notices I'm still on edge, which makes total sense, since just minutes ago she had a knife pressed against my throat. Even though I'm scared out of my mind, I sit down, because I know full well that if she wanted me dead, I'd already be gone. I take a deep breath and ask again what she wants here. Nightingale gently runs her hand across my face and says she can see the fear of witches in most people's eyes, but in mine, all she sees is curiosity. She says that with her invisibility magic, she was right on my heels all week long. She saw absolutely everything, even the sketchy little things I do before bed. I ask why she only showed herself now. Nightingale explains that just a little while ago, my head chambermaid had come into my room to serve me a glass of wine, and slipped a little surprise into that glass. It hits me like a truck. Tyre, my own head chambermaid, had poisoned my drink. Nightingale smiles and says with that dangerously casual tone of hers, "Looks like your harem isn't quite the safe haven you thought it was, buddy." I realize she just saved my life and thank her. But Nightingale brushes it off immediately, saying she saved me because I saved Anna, and that now we're even. Then she turns around and drops the bomb. I need to take Anna and Nana away from here. Caught off guard, I ask where. Nightingale says she's taking them to the Witches Association, because that's where they truly belong. I try to understand why that place would be the only safe option. She explains that only there can witches live in peace. No persecution, no discrimination, no need to hide from anyone. I tell her that in the border city they wouldn't be persecuted either, that I offered fair contracts and decent wages. Nightingale agrees, but says there's one thing I simply cannot do. You can't guide them to the sacred mountain. She explains that only there do witches find true peace. I then bring up that my men found traces of witches in the mountains to the north and ask if she's trying to reach the sacred mountain in the impassable mountain range. But Nightingale shuts that down and says no comment. I then tell her I can't just let her take the girls like this, because the demon months start in 2 months. The mountains will be buried in snow and crawling with demonic beasts. There's no way I'm letting Anna and Nana walk into that. So I suggest that Nightingale and the witches ride out the winter in the city, and then go look for the sacred mountain once it's safer. Nightingale realizes I'm basically suggesting the entire association come to the city. The idea isn't unappealing, but she pushes back. Even if I don't fear witches, plenty of people do. And the moment the church found out, they'd come down on us hard. So she asks me why I'd take on a risk that big, when it'd be so much easier to just let the witches go. Without even thinking twice, I answer, because they matter to me. Nightingale understands, but asks if I really want to put Anna's life on the line like that. I'm confused. She then explains that the real reason she wants to take Anna away is that when a witch turns 18, meaning she comes of age, she faces the first great trial of her life. Most witches awaken during the demon months, when they say the gates of hell swing wide open. Those who haven't awakened before turning 18 will most likely never become true witches. But those who have already awakened, every year, on the anniversary of their awakening, they suffer the torment of demonic possession. The body gets pushed to its absolute limit. Blood seeps through every inch of skin, eyes bulge out of their sockets. And if the witch can endure that unbearable pain, the body slowly recovers after 4 or 5 days of rest. But if she can't hold on, the death that follows is one of the worst imaginable. The witch dies in total agony, her organs and blood mixing together and pouring out of every opening in her body. And when they hit the air, they turn into black mist. And when there's nothing left to come out, all that remains is a burned, blackened layer of skin on the floor. Nightingale says that many witches die exactly when they turn 18, and that's why people see them as the living embodiment of the devil himself. Since Anna is about to reach that age, she'd have a far better chance of surviving within the association. Nightingale says she knows Anna and Nana are important to my plans, but she still hopes I'll give the girls a fighting chance to live. I, who worry way too much about both of them, agree to let Nightingale take them. She thanks me and vanishes right in front of me. Knowing she's still somewhere nearby, I go to Anna's room and reluctantly call for her. I introduce Nightingale and explain everything, but to both of our surprise, Anna says she's not going. Nightingale tries to explain more about the demonic possession, but Anna, steady and determined, says she'll push through it, and that all she wants is to stay by my side. Those words hit me like a freight train. I'm left completely speechless. Without much else she can do, Nightingale acknowledges Anna's resolve and decides to stick around the city for a while longer. She says that since she has experience dealing with demonic possession, she'll be able to help when that day comes. Then she steps closer to me, and with that look that's more dangerous than any knife says, "Looks like I'll be in your care for a while." I glance over at Anna and can't hide how happy I am that she chose to stay. The next morning, as soon as the maids wake me up, Carter comes in with some bizarre news. Tyre, my head chambermaid, died during the night. I already have a pretty good idea of what went down. Carter explains that she was found on the bedroom balcony, with no signs of a struggle or a break-in, probably an accident. I thank him for the update and dismiss Carter. I already know it was Nightingale, and the fact that she left absolutely no trace behind just shows how deadly and professional this woman really is. Then, speak of the devil, an angel-faced devil. She shows up in my room, helping herself to my breakfast, acting completely normal like nothing happened. I walk over and she explains that since she's sticking around, it's only natural that she helped take some of my concerns off my plate. She hands me a piece of paper with information about who's been trying to have me killed, and says she's the one who didn't kill Tyre. Tyre had poison hidden in a hollow tooth, and the moment Nightingale showed up, she took her own life. Nightingale just made it look like an accident. I read the note, and it all clicks. Tyre was sent to kill me not because she wanted to, but because someone had kidnapped her sister and was using her as a hostage. And then it really sinks in. It was one of my own brothers who sent Tyre. Nightingale then tells me to get moving to the meeting, except I haven't eaten a single thing yet, and I realize I'm going to spend the whole morning running on empty. At the meeting, even with my stomach growling, I listened to Barov explain that by selling the minerals at 50% below market value, they pulled in 200 gold coins. After deducting all expenses, like the wall construction and feeding the people, there were still 90 coins left over, enough to get through the winter. Then Carter explains that militia recruitment is going well. The goal of 100 men is almost there, but the training is a serious problem. You can't exactly expect a bunch of farmers and laborers to go toe-to-toe with demonic beasts. These guys can barely hold a sword right. I ask for suggestions. Carter proposes going to Baron Boris, thinking he can talk him into fighting. I agree, which gets Carter pretty pumped up. Then Barov sighs and says Carter just doesn't understand how the nobility works, that he's still too naive and has way too pure a heart. I agree and admit I only went along with Carter's suggestion to make him happy, because I already know Baron Boris isn't going to lift a finger for anyone. Barov then says he's worried because the townspeople have zero combat experience, and since there aren't enough swords and shields to go around, a lot of them would be fighting empty-handed. I tell him to chill, saying nobody's going to be fighting with nothing, and I pull out the blueprint for a new kind of magic that's probably going to flip that entire world upside down. Later, with Anna's fire magic as my test bench, I teach her to focus her flames to the tip of her finger, turning it into a blowtorch. The problem is, it completely drains Anna, and she collapses into my arms, turning red as a tomato. Curious, Anna asks me what on earth I'm cooking up. I tell her she'll see for herself soon enough, and that it's going to open the door to a whole new era. That night, when I head back to my room, Nightingale catches me off guard. She shows me that she grabbed the drafts of my project and says it's going to be really useful for the association, since they have a fire witch there too. I don't even sweat it, telling her I can just draw up another one. Nightingale then says, with a sincerity that genuinely catches me off guard, that she's jealous of Anna, because she can see how well I treat her and how much I trust her. And she says it's been so long since she's known what it's like to trust someone, or to be trusted by anyone. The next day, Carter and I saddle up and ride out to Baron Boris's estate. Carter's riding high, going on about how impressive the guy's mansion is, built with the finest stone and timber in the region, worth over 150 gold coins. When we arrive, Boris greets us with that fake, over-the-top flattery that doesn't fool anyone. I get straight to the point. The militia needs instructors, weapons, and seasoned fighters, and I expect Boris to answer the call and send his knights to help defend the city. Boris then proves he's a world-class lowlife. He says he's flattered by my personal visit, but finds the whole situation like super unfortunate. He makes up some excuse about how his men just got back from a hunt and are totally worn out. Then he has a servant hand over a little box to help out. Carter opens it all excited and finds a single gold coin. 1. I watch Carter nearly lose it from pure rage. Since I saw this coming from a mile away, I stand up, thank Boris for his generous contribution, and leave without making a scene. On the ride back, Carter apologizes to me, acknowledging that he brought shame to my name, and that Boris's attitude was a straight-up disgrace to the code of knightly loyalty. but I put Carter at ease. I tell him I saw this coming and that we can't rely on the nobles for anything. I've got my own plans and my own ways to train the militia, and even if it's a scrappy makeshift crew, I'll show everyone real soon what a real militia is capable of.